That is much more the topic of the second kind of session. So I think we can discuss that then. Except kind of to say only this that Trotsky's view about the defence of the property land property relations was that it was a task of the working class and the working class had to be mobilised in order to do that and without the working class doing that, of course fractions of the he thought that there could be fractions, he thought they were a very small fraction of the bureaucracy who might come over to the political revolution and support in those circumstances, as I think we show in the book, in the final analysis it didn't happen, but that's not because there was something intrinsically necessary that there should be a pro-communist, pro-working class, pro-revolutionary wing of the Stalinist bureaucracy. Trotsky very naturally thought there would be one because actually, that the parts of the bureaucracy were people who had actually been part of the Bolshevik Party in 1917 and had been part of and knew Lenin and worked under Trotsky and Lenin and so on. It's why 2 or 3 people like Ignaz Reis, came over, to Trotsky, although he was immediately murdered, by the Stalinists. I think in looking at the planned, just to Nat's point, that, yes, I agree that we've got to, this is an important thing to show this, but, don't imagine that all over the world everybody thinks, that Stalinism was a terrible thing, because actually, because Stalinism in its high point developed backward countries and sort of led to enormous steps forward, and capitalism in the semi-colonial world has not developed countries, leaving aside for the moment the enormous important exception of China, but because by and large that wasn't the case. Large numbers of people think that they were rather good. And not only that, but in large parts of Eastern Europe and in Russia and so on, if people are asked what was the best, capitalism or socialism, they'll say socialism, meaning what they had before, because if as Andy's obviously going to show, that there was something like a fall to about 6, from 100. If you had 100% of GDP and development, the restoration of capitalism led to a fall of 40%. Of all of that, and that meant a hell of a lot to people in terms of their living standards, wages, etc. Then they're not likely to think very highly, of capitalism. We, on the other hand, living in extremely, prosperous imperialist countries, with all our social welfare and all that built on top of the fact that we're an imperialist country and that our capital has been drawn and exploited from all over the world and from the semi-colonial world, i.e. our prosperity is directly related to their poverty, and misery, So you will have a different optic, as they say, on the experience of these states, that. Try to quickly answer what happened about Kampuchea, that. Well, we basically, going to be saying that what we think happened, was that the Stalinist guerrilla movement, actually tried to, carry out a Stalinist revolution in a country, that was not only extremely backward, but had been totally devastated by American bombing, and whatever. Remember the bomb them back into the Stone Age, remarks of the American generals and so on, and to some extent they had. And the Stalinists had the idea, by the way, they did carry out a Stalinist program. They did nationalise the sort of small number of factories and things in Phnom Penh. They did introduce a plan, and that, but they they decided the only thing they could do was to move all the extremely huge numbers of urban, people who fled into the cities away from the bombing and whatever, back into the countryside, and that, where they did the equivalent of a collectivization and that, which I said was a disaster in Russia, but can imagine what an even bigger disaster it was in a ravaged country like that. To be honest, it didn't succeed. It broke down, and that's what happened. It was an attempt at one of these Stalinist, kind of from above, kind of revolutions, kind of and that, but it kind of it did not succeed. It broke down and caused incredible misery and so on. And the repression, kind of was absolutely the same sort of thing, kind of that Stalin, carried out in his own way, kind of and that. So, it's a horror, I mean, we can't get around the fact, kind of that Stalinism is studded with these, kind of horrific, kind of events. Try to reply quickly on Kronstadt, although I think Jeremy's dealt with that. You see, if you read The Revolution Betrayed, kind of and that, you find, kind of, I mean, sorry, if Jeremy wants me to say, I totally condemn, kind of the position of Mark and his argument that Lenin and Trotsky were the organisers of Thermidor, kind of and that. It's a ridiculous, kind of thing to say. But Trotsky himself, includes an enormous number of important self-criticisms or criticisms of what happened. I mean, he thinks in some respects, kind of that there was an inevitability about what happened, kind of and that. But he says, for example, kind of and that he calls. He says, in March 1921, in the days of the Kronstadt revolt, which attracted to its ranks no small number of Bolsheviks, the 10th Congress of the party thought it necessary to resort to the prohibition of factions. That is, to transfer the political regime prevailing in the state to the inner life of the ruling party. And he says this was, this was what the bureaucrats seized upon. So, what is this? This is, an objective, horrific historical contradiction. And that is in order to save, kind of momentarily, kind of the proletarian dictatorship at the end of the Civil War. Kind of they took certain measures, kind of which later, or very quickly actually, kind of and that we, became instruments of the bureaucracy, for overthrowing the revolutionary forces inside the Bolshevik party itself. Kind of and that. It was not foreseen. Why? It had never happened before. Kind of and that. As Marxists, we don't believe that everything can be foreseen, and that we, kind of, and that simply, we'd be some sort of weird idealists if we actually thought, kind of that, you could work it all out in advance. Kind of and that. No, you can't. Kind of and that. There's a, there is a real living experience. Trotsky's final analysis of, came only, kind of, in 1936, at the end of a long argument about what the nature of the states, kind of, was. And last point, I just do want to get this quote in, because it's a good one, and it's about, because I think it reflects what we're going to discuss, kind of in the future, kind of on that, and that is, Trotsky did foresee and did see, kind of the beginnings of the expansion of Stalinism, but only in very small areas, in the eastern part of Poland, not very highly developed, and so on, and the overthrow, and he thought it was going to happen in parts of Finland, and so on. Kind of that is a bureaucratic overthrow of capitalism, kind of, and that by the Stalinist army, kind of, and whatever. He thought wrongly, by the way, kind of, because the Mensheviks gave him the wrong paper, had the wrong information, that the workers had played an important role in it, kind of, and that. But he nevertheless said the primary political, talking about the planned property, the extension of planned property relations, kind of, and whatever, by bureaucratic means. The primary political criterion for us is not the transformation of property relations, or this, that, or another area, however important these may be in themselves, but rather the change in the consciousness and organization of the world proletariat, the raising of their capacity for defending former conquests and accomplishing new ones. From this one and only defensive standpoint, the politics of Moscow, taken as a whole, completely retains its reactionary character and remains the chief obstacle on the road to the world proletarian revolution. That was the mistake, kind of, that the Trotskyists made, is they thought if, not all Trotskyists, not all the time, and there was, we can go into the various arguments about, and not in each particular country's case, kind of, and that, but by and large, the Trotskyists, kind of, were pushed in the direction of saying that if the Stalinists could overthrow, kind of, the planned property relations, then they perhaps weren't counter-revolutionary. They weren't this chief obstacle, kind of, on the road. They could be worked with, kind of, and that, and reformed. And the program of political revolution turns into a program of political reform. But I mean, these issues, I think that, that come up, just as what the comrade said about, kind of, the political revolutions that did occur, kind of, in Russia. I think we'll have to mention them again because Hungary is a very important case. So there were workers' councils in Hungary, Soviets, in the almost full sense of the word, but nevertheless they had they weren't able to develop the right program, and thus they failed.
Thank you so much.